Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to SBAM Small Business Briefing. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Operations, and today I'm joined by my colleague Jacob Manning. Jacob, thanks for joining me.
Good afternoon, Jacob Manning. I'm the Advocacy and Policy Manager here at SBAM. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks for inviting me on, Sarah.
All right, let's start off today's show by welcoming one of our new members. They are a VIP member, CXI Exchanges, and owners Joe and Janine Mervin. Thanks for joining. Okay, we're starting off with some big news yesterday that the U.S. conflict in the Middle East may soon be at an end. Jacob, what can you tell us?
Yes, so I'm starting the program out today by putting on my international correspondent hat and talking about this potentially massive agreement that was reached between the United States and Iran. We could be seeing the end to a topic that's spurred and really dictated a lot of the conversation for this year, both politically and just in the general sense of the news. Last night, President Trump announced that the United States and Iran reached an interim deal that would end the war. So some conditions. Officials from both sides are going to meet in Switzerland on Friday to sign a deal. After that part, negotiations will continue for the next 60 days, where particulars will be agreed on, and these will be particulars pertaining to the future of Iran's nuclear program. There's still a lot that we don't know about the agreement, even still today. We've seen some leaks that indicate that there are some things that we can't account for. We know that the Strait of Hormuz is going to open. The blockade, the U.S. blockade on the strait, is going to be lifted, and it's expected that Iran is going to be getting some sort of sanction relief from U.S. sanctions on Iran. And there's going to be an end to fighting on all fronts, and that includes Lebanon as well, where there's still some ongoing fighting back and forth. There are still conflicting sources on whether or not boats will be able to freely pass through the strait or if they're going to be charged a toll, if Iran is going to have the authority to charge a toll. The president has said that that will not be the case, but that is certainly still up in the air. And while it seems like we may have finally turned a corner here, the president has said that strikes will continue if both sides can't reach a finalized nuclear deal. That's still really the linchpin in this whole thing. So, looking at things now, what does this change? Well, I mean, we saw a response right away in the stock market this morning. I think last I checked, the Dow was up some 600 points, and the price of oil dropped to the mid 70s per barrel, which is lower than it's been in months. This doesn't mean that for consumers, the gas prices are immediately going to drop back down to where they were before the conflict started. There's a lot of factors that still need to catch up before we see anything like that. But this sort of sets things on a path towards that. And politically, which is what which is in our line of work that I'm most concerned about. This is it's seemed pretty obvious for the last couple of months that President Trump has wanted to get out of this conflict. Being in a relatively unpopular war is a liability on a lot of different fronts. We start seeing defections within the Republican Party on some of these war powers resolution votes. And once gas prices start to climb to the levels that we've seen them at in the last couple of months, it has a real effect on voters. I was just at the pump the other day. You start seeing the stickers that start appearing on the gas pump, the cutout of the president with his finger, he's pointing to the costs on how much you're paying. It says, "I did that." You start to see those stickers start to pop up. Once you get to that $4, $5 a gallon range, it becomes really unpalatable for voters. And we've talked about it all the time on this program, but of course, there's an upcoming election coming this November, and this factors into that too. If you look at what the aggregate polling is, just compiling and averaging out all of the polls that are done across the board, just generic ballot Democrats versus Republicans. Democrats are up about 5 to 10 points on Republicans, and if that holds, Republicans could easily lose both the House and the Senate, and these being the last 2.5 years of President Trump's time in office, his appetite to face what would come from having a Democratic House and Senate is not something that is necessarily something that he desires. So, seeing an end to this is a win for him. And before we move on, it is important to note that the details of what's in the deal actually do matter politically on if the President Trump can sell this to voters as this was a worthwhile endeavor and we're past it now. So far, the response to the deal has pretty much fallen upon party lines, as you can expect, but we're going to know more in the coming days.
All right, well, thanks for that update, Jacob. And now you can change hats, and we're going to talk about health insurance. SBAM made a lot of news last week about health insurance, and so you were on the front lines of these efforts, and I'm hoping you can give us some updates here.
Yes, definitely a big week in the news. Always good to be getting some coverage for the advocacy work that we're doing, and of course, it's on this issue of healthcare. I would say we've always, of course, had an interest in health insurance, but particularly for the last few years, this has really taken top priority for us as it's become a higher priority for our members and for business owners. Uh, we've released a number of surveys to the public. We've conducted surveys amongst our membership. And from those surveys, we've been able to find that about 80% of small businesses are reporting double-digit premium increases for the better part of a decade. Premium increases were stable at about 1% per year. And over the last, since post-pandemic, we've seen double-digit increases stacked on top of each other year after year. We've quantified this out as about a $2,000 added cost per employee per year. We've heard from 76% of small business owners saying that the ever increasing costs of employee benefits have affected their ability to hire. And then we've also heard from just over half of members that responded and said that they were forced to make that difficult decision because of the increasing cost of benefits that no small business owner ever wants to make, but they were forced to make this decision that they would have to either scale back, restructure how they offer benefits to their employees, or completely eliminate their benefit offerings altogether. So we have been pretty hard on this topic for the last few months. We, of course, had the op-ed that our board of directors penned that appeared in Crain's. Um, and we've just been doing a lot of messaging to lawmakers, trying to urge them to uh, make employee benefits more flexible, give small business owners more options. And then on the cost side, trying to look at what those cost drivers are, whether that be hospital or pharmaceutical or pharmacy benefit managers. There are a lot of things in the system that result in this high price tag, but we're asking them to take an approach of it's not just one single thing. It's a menu of items. There's a lot of things you can do to make it help. And one of the issues that we've been advocating for most strongly is for a state level association health plan bill. We've talked about it on this program a couple of times, and so I don't want to be duplicative of what we've already talked about, but um, we had been advocating for change on a federal level for a while to allow association health plans like they were allowed for a brief 1.5 year period between 2017 and 2019 when employers could band together, small employers could band together to form their own risk pools in cross sector association health plans. Right now, small employers are restricted to only band together and form risk pools through associations with employers of the same industry that they fall in. That really locks a lot of small businesses out of being able to join a plan like that. There are not options available for most sectors. And so we think that it makes a lot of sense to allow small businesses to band together geographically. It gives small businesses a lot of the same advantages that large employers have, the buying power that they have, the leverage that they have to negotiate, the advantages they can achieve from implementing wellness programs. There are a lot of advantages for why an association health plan could be beneficial, and so this is what we've been advocating for. We're fortunate to have a bill that was introduced that would do just that on a state level, would allow these association health plans to form. And that bill got a committee hearing on Wednesday. The bill is Senate Bill 1011. It was introduced by Senator Kevin Hertel. He is actually the chair of the Health Policy Committee, and so one of the advantages of having a bill that you support that's introduced by the chair of the committee in which the bill is introduced is that the bill got a committee hearing right away, and we were fortunate enough to be asked to come and testify in support of that bill. And so our Chief Revenue Officer, Michelle Beebe, of course, who's been on this program before, and many of you will, of course, know through the great work that she does, was joined with Greg Brogan, who is with Brogan Insurance Agency, and together they sort of tackled what the need is for this bill and how it would help. Um, the two of them have so much experience talking with small business owners, working in the employee benefit space, and have a great understanding of one, the need, and two, what this bill would solve. And so uh, they testified, they completely knocked it out of the park. They did a fantastic job. They fielded a handful of questions from committee members, both Republicans and Democrats, who were trying to get a better understanding of what this bill would do. And towards the end of it, it really felt in the committee room that both sides of the aisle, everybody was on board, understanding that this is a serious need for small business owners and that this bill would be a step in the right direction. We did get some coverage on that bill just in some local papers in Cranes Grand Rapids. They did a good write-up on Michelle and Greg's testimony, and there was also an article in MERS and Gongwer as well, in just the Lansing scene. Um, but we also, on top of that, had another story that ran on WLNS. And this was a story that ran with a couple of SBAM members and also, of course, Michelle Beebe, who's really become a super champion for this issue. But in this news story, it was Lori Richard, who is a superstar, longtime SBAM member with Edge Partnership, and Patty Eisenbraun of Brown Iron Brew House on the SBAM board of directors, and Michelle, all three of whom were interviewed and asked about what the issue is that is facing employers. And they did a great job speaking to what the real life impact is, the decisions that they are having to make on an everyday basis. And that one was not so much as focused on the individual bill, but more focused on uh, the need. And so definitely an issue that is at the front of mind for a lot of just casual observers of the news that could have been watching this week and now have on their radar an issue that they weren't aware of. So we're grateful that both in terms of public opinion, we're getting some traction on this issue, and then also legislatively, we were able to have that committee hearing last week. An update on that before we move on is that we did hear at the end of the committee hearing, the chair of the committee said that they took testimony last week on the bill, had a discussion. This week on Wednesday is the regularly scheduled time. They have not yet posted their agenda, so we don't know for sure. But this is what the chair said in the committee meeting. He said that they plan to take a vote and vote the bill out of committee this week. So that would be a major win for SBAM, a major win for small businesses, and we're hopeful that that can happen towards this week.
Well, thanks for the update, Jacob. Certainly a lot of hard work has been going on behind the scenes, and we'll keep everybody posted as we move forward. All right, let's talk about some other news we made last week when the Small Biz PAC announced its first round of endorsements.
Yeah, so we had also sort of hinted at this last week when I was on with Brian that we are gearing up for election season. We have the primary election in the beginning of August, and then November, of course, is the general election. And SBAM does play in elections. We have a PAC, a political action committee, which we can use to engage in some local statewide races. And just to give an overview of how we engage in the process, we do make endorsements in the State House and State Senate. These are the offices that we work with most closely, the people in the legislature who are working bills through the committee process. These are the people we work with most closely, and this is where we can have the most impact, and so that's where we spend the most time. We also consider endorsements for other statewide races, like we will have discussions talking about the governor race, the Secretary of State race, the Attorney General race, and the various Michigan Supreme Court races. We do not get involved in congressional races, presidential races, or local races either. We don't make endorsements in mayoral races, county commission races, city council races, anything like that. So we released our first batch of endorsements on, they're listed on our website now. We have an election center on our website on sbam.org. And we endorsed 62 candidates running for the Michigan State House and State Senate. This first round of endorsements are typically a lot of candidates who we have a history with, who we've endorsed before. Towards the start of the process, there are 148 races that our Small Biz PAC board has to make decisions on. So we like to start with, let's say, the easy ones where we can uh, go through all of the candidates who have submitted candidate questionnaires, have applied for endorsement through SBAM, and we cycle through those and we start to consider those. So most of the candidates that we have endorsed in this first round are incumbents, but there are a couple of names that are not incumbents, maybe some people who took a couple cycles off and are previously endorsed SBAM candidates, or other candidates who our Small Biz PAC board vetted and decided that they are sufficiently with small business and would be a good member, good addition to the legislature. And so they did decide to endorse those people as well. So 62 total. And sort of where we go from here, there will be a handful of other Small Biz PAC board meetings throughout the summer where we consider more of those races. We got 62 of the 148 out of the way. That still leaves, I can't do quick math off the top of my head, but that still leaves quite a few races to consider. And so the PAC board will definitely be busy and there will be more endorsements to come. But this first batch is out, and you'll see if you go through the list a lot of tried and true names that have been friends of SBAM for a long time. If you have candidates in your life who are running for state house and state senate, we are asking all candidates of both parties, of course, and in any race and across the state to submit our candidate questionnaire. We've sent it out to all candidates, and the more questionnaires, the better. The more information, the better. And we do require that all candidates that receive the Small Biz PAC board endorsement do submit our candidate questionnaire. So if you know any candidates in your life that are running for state elected office, might be a good question to ask them. Have you filled out SBAM's candidate questionnaire? Because we do require it for endorsement. And if they fill that out, they will be in the running for these upcoming PAC board meetings this summer.
All right, thanks, Jacob. And yes, I did drop the link in the chat here on Zoom and on Facebook, so you can check out our endorsed candidates so far. So, Jacob, last week you and Brian talked about the Gordie Howe Bridge opening, and there have been a couple of developments since then. What's the latest?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a letdown on this front. We talked last week about how there were rumblings that the Gordie Howe Bridge opening was imminent. And at the time, we didn't have a date, but what we did have was a couple of articles that sort of popped up and indicated that a date would be like sooner than what people expected. As soon as we wrap up the briefing last week, Monday, I get a chat message from a member of our team, Diane Marvin, who's always on top of the news. She sent me a breaking news article that came out very close to the start of the briefing that said that the ribbon cutting was announced for Friday. So even sooner than we had expected, Friday of last week. And that was sort of the operating assumption for much of the week until the end of the week. It was announced that the US and Canada agreed to delay the opening of the bridge once again. And so spokespeople from both the Canada and the US sides say that there are still some outstanding issues that need to be resolved before the bridge opens. So if you remember back a few months ago, there was a disagreement between Canada and the administration. The disagreement was on the grounds of trade, arguments on if Canada should pay for more of the bridge than what they've pitched in so far. And this appears to be related to those outstanding issues from the past. So another delay, a date that we initially had, we were very close to that date, but it was there was a kibosh put on that. There is still no announced anticipated date after the delay, but when there is, we will definitely be here to talk about it.
All right, let's talk about the state budget. So, Jacob, according to state law, the legislature has just 15 days to pass the final budget. Are they on track to meet their deadline?
Yeah, so if you recall from last year, the legislature went way over time on their budget. So there is a law written into, or there's a law written into Michigan's uh, list of compiled laws. It's PA 160 of 2019. It's a provision that requires the legislature to pass and present a general appropriation budget for the upcoming fiscal year by July 1st. And this bill was, the intent is that schools need certainty, program directors need certainty, on what is going to be coming in the upcoming fiscal year. Let's give them July 1st as the deadline. Now, there is not really any sort of condition in the law that says if they don't, this will happen. And so what we've seen is that the sort of June 30th deadline is sort of more aspirational than anything else. Since the deadline was established back in 2019, the legislature has achieved their deadline a grand total of 0 times. Since then, budgets have been signed on September 20th, September 30th, September 29th, July 20th, July 31st, July 24th, and then last year it was October 7th. And so last year was the first time in a long time that we entered a fiscal year with no budget. And with that in mind, a lot of lawmakers entered this budget cycle saying, not happening this time. This time, we are going to be wrapped up by June 30th. And it makes a lot of sense. We're approaching an election year. I don't think any elected officials want to be going back to their district to knock doors in the summer to hear from school teachers who are feeling uncertain about how they still don't have a budget for their schools for the upcoming fiscal year. Um, that being said, now we're about 15 days out. That deadline is starting to really loom large. Lawmakers were in for part of the week last week, but did not make any traction on any sort of budget negotiations. It was announced today that Governor Whitmer was going to be embarking on another trade mission. She's going to be gone all week in Europe, so this is another week when hardcore budget negotiations will not be occurring. And so really that just leaves next week, the 23rd through the 25th. The 30th is 2 weeks from tomorrow. And so that is really not a lot of time to work on a budget. And there are still a lot of things in this year's budget that are up for debate. Just for starters, there's a $1.6 billion funding hole that's created by changes to how Medicaid is funding. And all sides of the aisle, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, and the governor all agree that this hole needs to be filled in order to reach a budget negotiation. There are also evolving conversations on economic development. The governor has made it a top priority to achieve some sort of economic development conversation or economic development tool that currently doesn't exist in state law. And there are still a lot of considerations and a lot of gaps between the two budgets. The House made some significant cuts to state departments, made significant cuts to State Department IT budgets, and the House insists that they want to rein in on the ghost employee issue that was discussed a lot last year as well. There were also significant changes, reductions in university funding, whereas the Senate did not make those changes, and then per pupil funding increases across the board from both the House and the Senate. So a lot of considerations going into this budget season, and just a little bit of a monkey wrench that was thrown into this is that in a press conference this week, the Speaker of the House, excuse me, it was last week, but the Speaker of the House said that they could be considering just running a sort of continuing resolution like we see on the federal level, where he said, well, what if we just fund the government for 4 months and then revisit this in January of next year? We'll have a new speaker, or excuse me, we'll have a new Senate majority leader, we'll have a new governor, and we can just revisit then, fund the government until then. It's not exactly clear how that would work. We've never, as far as I'm aware, we've never seen anything like that, but definitely just maybe trying to get people to the table to begin these negotiations because there's a long way to go. So we're going to be continuing to track the budget process as it goes. Not exactly certain on that June 30th date, but still holding out hope that maybe next week they can finalize a deal.
Well, one thing is for certain, and that is that we will keep you posted. That is our show for today. Jacob, thank you for joining me and filling in for Brian. It's like kind of last call to attend our annual meeting and our Small Biz PAC fundraiser this Thursday. It's at Eagle Eye Golf Club in Bath. You can find the details on our website. Otherwise, we will see you back here next Monday at 3 o'clock. Have a great week.
Have a great week.